Hoot it.
Hi guys, how are we? We have this chair battle every day. So yeah, how are you? Happy Thursday.
Chairman on the board here.
You're boring? What?
You made a joke and you think you're funny.
So Brandon is like king of cheesy jokes, and if I ever make cheesy jokes, he's just like, he doesn't even humor me and laugh, and I'm like, this is like what you live on. What? All right, you guys. So give us a hello when you guys jump on. Hi, Brian. So we're talking today about how to find a work-life balance, but we're going to spin this a little bit differently than maybe what you thought you were going to talk about. So we're going to talk about hi, Nate. How do
Good to see you again, buddy.
the people in your life affect your work-life balance, and what's going on under the surface that maybe you're not totally aware of, and how to identify that stuff, bring awareness, and then start to shift it.
So I think one thing that we've found for ourselves, and I think that can serve you guys the most, is understanding that I think balance is another hot word that gets thrown around a lot, right? Like, well, it has to be 50-50. It's got to be a teeter-totter where everything's sitting in on it. And it's understanding that it doesn't really work that way, especially when you're trying to evolve and create something. You're always going to have to put more eggs in one basket and kind of work back and forth. But I mean, our stance on there is, yet again, I think the parts that get overthrown around is the sacrifice, the determination, those type of hot words that are really massive slogans because they sell a lot. Discipline, right? Like they get thrown around a lot because they're easy selling things. And at the same time, I think, and I'm speaking for my own, is you can live into those things and you can really make yourself feel that you're not doing enough at any point in time, right? And so it's being able to I think really be aware of understanding that balance, I think, is honestly more an illusion. And at the same time, I think it, to me, is if you are living in the aspect of, well, I'm sacrificing, I'm doing all these, I'm super dedicated, I'm determined, I'm doing all these things, right? Like, what was the other one you threw out there?
Discipline.
I'm disciplined, right? Like that's another one. Like, sacrifice is the lazy person's word for discipline, right? Like you hear all those things getting thrown around, right? And it's our viewpoint and like our stance on there is, well, if you're living your life with integrity for the version of you that you feel is true to you, is it really sacrifice? Are you really having to alter anything other than your own self, right? And so I think that's the first thing that I think we kind of talk about with our clients and talk about people when they're trying to aspire to goals is that goal truly yours? Is it something that is compelling to you? And do you have, yet again, it comes back to what is your why, or first, what is it that you want, and why is it so compelling and so important that you accomplish that?
Well, and I think it's understanding, right, that balance is, nobody has balance. I'm going to be honest, there's no balance. Like, there might be, and what's your time frame for balance, right? That's the other part. Is it within an hour? Is it within a day? Is it within a month? Is it within a week? Is it within a year, right? Like, what does that mean? And again, like Brandon said, if you're working towards the best version of yourself, all of that should be inspired action, and it shouldn't be sacrifice, right? And so are there days where you work really long hours? Yeah, I mean, we have for 10 years, but that doesn't mean that we don't have quality family time and we don't have time with each other and we don't have, but like sometimes that's just what it is, right? And sometimes, like when Brandon was really big into competing, there were times where there was way more working out than there was working in a given day, right? But because that was the goal that he was headed towards. And so I think it's impossible to balance all of the things, right? Like I know for me, when I started my like self-development journey and I joined my program, I was like, you know what? Like trying to compete at the CrossFit Games or to compete at a local level, like that was no longer on my top priority list because everything can't be part of the priority list, right? Was I still staying healthy? Was I doing all of that? Yes. But I knew my healing and my growth was way more important. And not to say the other things didn't happen, but in life, that like Brandon said, there's going to be a give and a take, right? But what we've started to see a lot lately, and we talked about relationships a couple weeks ago, is something that happened with us for a very long time. And I think it still does, is by today's putting groceries away experience. I'll tell you that story in a minute. But we see a lot of people that are like, they're trying to sort of shift out of hustle, right? They're trying to figure out like, why are they chasing perfectionism? Like they're kind of going through those things and they've maybe pulled a layer back. What they don't realize is that their partner is not necessarily in that growth. So I'll tell you guys our story and then we'll talk about what's going on with our clients. So back in the day, we were both massive like achievers and hustlers and perfectionists, and that was the life we lived. And it served us in some ways, right, to be able to create a business, start a gym together when we'd known each other for 4 months, like literally had $0 when we started our business, right? So in a way, it was really good for us. Like, it allowed us to do all the things that we needed to do. What we didn't understand was that we were subconsciously sabotaging the other one and our inability to ever relax. Because literally, like, if he was working, I felt like had to be working. If I was working, he felt like he had to be working. And eventually we got into this pattern where we were literally working all the time. Like, we didn't even know how to talk to each other if it wasn't somehow about work or how we could serve our clients or what we could do or what would make it better. And so, like, I mean, Brayden's told this story, but if he was sitting on the couch and not working or on the chair in the middle of the day, we get up at 3 a.m., like say it's 2 in the afternoon and he's tired. If I walked down the stairs, he would like grab something and like act busy. And it was like, this is insane. And on the weekends, I'd be like, hey, let's go to the zoo with the girls. And he'd be like, I got to build that shelf. And I'm like, you got to build that shelf on Sunday, right? But there was this thing of like always having to be hustling and always having to be working, and we fed each other that, right? Hi, Sam. Like, we fed each other that energy, and it wasn't serving us. And so once we're able to shine light on it, it was like, oh, okay, like, I give you permission to not always be working. I give myself permission to not always be working, because we realized that wasn't serving us. The hustle, the constant chaos, like we talked about yesterday, like it wasn't serving us, and it wasn't getting us anywhere, and it was robbing us of a lot of happiness.
Well, and so my own journey, you know, we're all on a journey, but I think my own journey came through a point in my life when I kind of ran into a wall and realized what I was doing was punishing myself, but was ultimately punishing my family. Right, like I was at the height of my competing career in CrossFit. Like, I just made regionals for the 4th time. I was gonna go and try to earn a spot to go compete at the CrossFit Games, and nothing I could do was good enough, right? And nothing that anyone could tell me was good enough, wasn't enough support, wasn't any of these things. And one of the things that, and I don't even know how I came about it, but the thing that really opened my eyes was a book. And honestly, I didn't know where I came across. It was a book by John Gordon, The Energy Bus. You know, and some of you guys might have read it. If you haven't, I highly suggest it to you. It's in story format, right? Like it really seeps through and kind of gets hit on the point. But energy is everything, right? And it really dials in the fact of all we are is, yet again, we're energy, and we feed off of each other. And I think what we've come to really understand is when we're in that masculine or feminine, we're bouncing off each other because we're in the same energies, or one's trying to be more receptive and more calm, right? Like, for us, the opposite. What we didn't need at that time was every other entrepreneurial podcast that was out there of like, you need to be working 23.5 hours a day. If you're not grinding, if you're not hustling, if you're not selling, if you're not overworking, if you're not killing your competition, you're not worthy, right? Like, we didn't need that, right? Like, that's what we thought we needed, right? Because that had all the hits, that had all the publicity, that had all the things that everyone else was telling us that's what you should be doing. And when Courtney was trying to pump the brakes a little bit, like, I need to slow myself down and slow my roll and actually discover and see what the hell I'm doing here and see if this is actually serving me. My misunderstanding of that was like, no, we need to go harder, right? Like, it was that same sense of like, we need to choose the hard route and we need to go through this. And so on that side is she would see her own patterning come back, because everything we do is just patterns, right? And so when she was trying to pump the brakes and self-discover, my pattern was like, no, let's push harder. And so that would push her back into her pattern of just going. And it'd be this loop of constant, like, I'm trying all the things, but why the hell can I not see the benefit of what's going on? And honestly, it took until me to really dive in and go along this journey with her of my own discovery of like, holy shit, actually everything that and yet again, you may not be on this road, but everything that we needed to do was actually downshift and slow down and actually look at everything from a 10,000 foot view, as opposed to ramming our head into the wall over and over and over, because we had done that for 10 years, right? Like, but what we were finding out is my energy was actually causing her to feed off of that. And so it was causing this spiral effect between both of us, right? Because it's just energy.
And when we kind of had a guilt cycle, right? Like we felt like we had to hustle for our worth. And so we were both hustling for it. And it was like, well, who can hustle harder? Who can do this better? Who can, and the same thing happened with exercise, with nutrition, right? Like if one of us was trying to make a change, like we stayed in the norm because we didn't realize it, right? And so we've seen that with clients. Like we have a lot, like most of the people we work with are high achievers, they're entrepreneurs, they're go-getters, they're that energy, that personality, which is amazing. But there are downsides of that personality. So if that's you and you relate to that and you're like, I'm a perfectionist, I'm a people pleaser, I'm always doing, and you're not getting to where you want to go, you need to listen to this, right? Because most of the time, if that's your energy, it's actually slowing down that you need, right? But if you try to slow down and your partner's still pushing ahead, you're going to have some conflict, right? And you're going to have some struggle. And when I started, I mean, you guys have probably, most of you have heard my story about morning routine. Like I literally replaced disordered eating because that was my need for certainty with meditating and breath work and stretching and having a morning routine where I got up, I got inside of myself, I created my energy, and I created this calm space in my life so that I didn't go right to work. And like I literally had to be like, you can't talk to me in the morning, because we were used to, we'd both get up, it'd be 3:45 in the morning, we're like, okay, we gotta do this, we gotta check on this person, we gotta do that, we gotta blah, 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 and we go right into work, right? And it was a terrible way to be. And I literally had to say, you cannot talk to me about work right now. And in the beginning, like, if he would say something, it would trigger me, and I would be angry, and I'm like, I don't wanna talk about this right now, right? And then we both got into this understanding of like, we say good morning, we both have our thrive, he goes one way, I go the other, and then we go spend our time, right? And it's like, that problem will wait, right? Just because we live together, we run businesses together, doesn't mean that every hour of every day we need to be talking about that. And that created calm in both of our lives. It created calm in our relationship, and it allowed us both to say, okay, it's okay for us to slow down. We are 100% worthy without having to do this. But we see this in our clients all the time. And so we've been having, it's interesting, we've had some conversations with couples that we work with separately, and then we're starting to see these patterns where they don't realize they're doing that with each other, right? And so we work with a lot of couples separately and then together. But what we're seeing is there's a lot of people that have that, and they're like, well, this is just how I am. And it's like, so one person decides to do something, and their energy shifts, and then their partner's energy shifts, right? And then they're both like, oh, why are we doing this again? Like, I don't want to be in this energy. And so what we're learning is like, bring awareness to that and start to see like, do you need to like open up that conversation with your partner and be like, look, like maybe this is not actually serving us, and maybe this is what we actually need to do to slow down. Or maybe the universe will step in. I'll let Brandon tell you the story about our first trip to San Diego. Like sometimes the universe steps in and says, hey, hold on, I'm going to show you what this is like. But when you can start to understand that like your actions, especially if you're married or in a relationship, you have a best friend you're with all the time, like what they're doing is probably completely affecting what you're doing and how you show up in the world. Want to tell them about San Diego?
Sure.
We were talking about this earlier.
So this was probably 2 years into in the first 2 years. Yeah, I think we were about 2 years into opening up the gym, and so we were 2 years into our relationship too. And so we basically, from the time we met, 4 months into it to this point in time, had been working probably 90 hours a week. Not exaggerating, probably on a minimum 90 hours a week. And so, it was that constant, we got to keep pushing, we got to keep grinding, we got to keep doing those things. And I'm not saying that you don't need to take action. Right? Like, I think that's the part that gets misconstrued a little bit. Well, like that, you're telling me I don't need to know. You need to take action. Sometimes you need to take a lot of action to get your butt going in the direction you want to.
It's
but
the energy of hustle.
It's the intention in which you're in which you're driving towards, right? And what we were doing at that time frame was, well, we got to grind, we got to hustle, we got to do all these things. And because a lot of it was serving around the worthiness aspect of, we have to do this because we have to validate everything that we are doing, right? And so doing this for 2 years and working 90 plus hours a week, we started to have some conflictions and started having some arguments amongst ourselves that normally weren't there. And so finally, it was we had an argument on the way to the Bronco game. Literally, we were on down the street from the place that we used to live at that was a block away from Mile High. And we were about to end. It was like, pull over. I got to get out. This isn't working. Like, we got to go. And then, like, come find it. She's like, I booked us seats and trip to go to San Diego.
I don't think I had booked it yet, had I?
You pretty much did. Well, not then, but it was basically on like, this can't happen anymore. We need a break.
That was like the only like real fight we've ever had. And it was funny because like, I am a talk it out, don't you dare fucking walk away. And Brandon's like, give me some space person. He literally got out of the car and I was like, oh my God, what happens now? And I remember him telling me that that's how he was in fights. And so I like sat there and freaked out for like 10 minutes and then got back in the car. And then it was like, we got to get away. We have to, we got to figure out how to slow down because
so at that point I wasn't as aware of a lot of things that I do that I am now, but I knew that was one of the things for me in my past that usually I would erupt because I would fight it out to the bitter end, right? Like it didn't matter. I would erupt and usually say things that had nothing to do with anything, but that was my MO of using my words and my language to hurt somebody. And so that was my reasoning that I learned at that point, that I need to remove myself from this scenario, and unfortunately had to learn the hard way due to my past. But with that being said, it was and I will say, when she said we're going to San Diego, like, it was the same thing of like, no, what the hell are we going to do? We got to work. We got to do these things. Like, we have all these things that need to get accomplished, right? Like, we're not there yet. We don't have time to go away. And she's like, no, we're going away. Like, there's no other choice about this. And so we ended up going to San Diego. And to this day, like, we were just reminiscing about it on the walk we had earlier, but literally it was, if you didn't know the scenario, you probably would have thought it was the worst trip of all time. Because literally the place that we found I don't know where she found it, was literally somebody's shack in the backyard in California.
It was a converted garage.
Yeah, like, but it was a shack. Like it was tiny. It was very tiny.
It was tiny. It had a bed. It had a little tiny kitchen. It had a bathroom. It didn't actually even have heat. There was like a space heater, and it was literally somebody's garage that they converted. But it was cute.
Honestly, if I could rebuild this thing, I would do it right now, because it was honestly cute as all get out, but at the same time, that's exactly what we needed. And then we got there and it did nothing but pretty much rained the whole time we were there.
So we had these plans of like, we're going to drop into this gym and that gym, and like we were going to hustle through vacation because we didn't know how to slow down, right? And like literally God, universe, whatever was like, I'm going to pour rain. So you have to stay inside. We literally, one day we watched movies for like 8 hours. Like, we legit just ate food we didn't eat. We laid there and watched these movies. And at the end of the day, we were like, we really, really needed that. And we had no idea because we never allowed ourselves to slow down. But like, it sort of took something forcing us to slow down for us to really understand how much stress we were in, how much we were like putting on each other and taking on ourselves and being in that energy. And now we're a lot more aware of it, right? Where we create that space, we downshift, right? If you listen to our shift program, it's downshift, cruise, accelerate. We do that literally every single day in our day, where we downshift first. So we make sure we create that time and that space to manifest the energy, so that then we can cruise through our day and then take inspired action.
So, I mean, hopefully the point that we're getting across to you guys is as you become more aware for yourself, you can also understand how you feed off of your partner. You feed off of the people that are around you, because that's one thing that we find. We continue to find that, right? Like, we did that when we brought in the groceries, right? Like, she was going to get some food. While she was doing that, I started unpacking the groceries, and it was like, damn it, I'll help you. You call me overachiever, whatever it was. You're a super motivated person. It's like, well, that has nothing to do with you, right? But there's still those things that come up for us that, on some regard, used to be on the tally board of like, well, I'm doing groceries, why the hell aren't you? When it's really like, well, that doesn't matter on any of that, but it's being aware of that and how you can help your partner through these things, and at the same time help yourself through these things.
Yeah, and if you can learn to communicate about it, like once you observe it, like, hey, and we did a lot of projection too. Like, I would project onto him things that he was projecting onto me, and like it just kept us in that energy, and it just wasn't serving us. And so something to be aware of like, where's your own balance, but where's the balance in your relationship? And if you're trying to make a change, and you're trying to shift, and you're trying to grow, and you're trying to create space for your life, and your partner's not, it's probably a conversation you need to have with them, even if they don't want to, like, have the conversation about boundaries, because I know for me that literally changed everything. And it allowed Brandon to, on his own time, want to be also on a journey, right? It wasn't me shoving it down his face, like, you need to do this, you need to do this. It was me saying, hey, I've got to create this for me, and him seeing the change in me and the shift in me, that he was like, okay, I actually want to do that too. And that's balance in your day, right? Like, we work a lot still, but we're not in the energy of hustle. And we also create time and space to go on family walks, to meditate, to stretch, to do all of the things, because we know that that's part of what keeps us balanced internally. And I think as we talk about this, like, balance is a feeling, right? Like, I used to feel chaotic all the time, and I used to feel like I was stressed all the time, and I was struggling all the time, and I was in this sensation. And now I know how to balance out my energy, so I actually feel balanced. Even if we work for 16 hours a day, I still am able to feel in balance in myself. And that's really where you're going to be able to find balance in your life, is do it internally first, and then you'll see your world outside of you start to balance.
Well, and one thing I will say is, yet again, whether it's a romantic relationship, a spouse, a family member, whatever it may be, is communicate. I think that's one thing that we run into a lot with clients, is like, well, I'm going to do this thing, right? Like, well, does your spouse know you're doing this? Well, no, I'm going to have all these changes. They're not going to know what's really going on. It's like, well, that doesn't really work. Because if you're on this journey, you're on this path, but they still think you're driving this way, but you're really driving this way. When you are having your own discovery and you're having these own things that are coming about for you, but they don't really understand what may be going on, that's going to also push you back into this direction, even though you're wanting to go back over this direction, because yet again, your body wants congruency and consistency. And so if your partner, the other person that is your other energetic mode in this world that you're probably around the most, isn't necessarily on board because they don't know what you're doing, you're probably also throwing more obstacles in the road for yourself. So the relationships, presence, communication, all these things evolve around each other, and they're very vital. But if you are under that, because we've seen it a lot of like, well, I'm going to just surprise them, and they, you know what, they're not interested. Well, have you ever talked to them about that? Well, no, I'm just assuming because this isn't their cup of tea. Well, whether it is or not, if you're going through it, they need to make it part of their selection as far as flavors go, whether it's their tea or not, right? Like, they need to be aware of what's going on. You like how I did that? But it, like,
Took me a second to figure out what you did there.
But if they're not aware of it, you're going to probably also constantly like be poked with a stick because they're not going to know what's going on. So do yourself a favor, get them on the same page, at least in the same vicinity of where you're at, so you can also help yourself through this.
So hopefully that was helpful. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. We're going to hit you with episode 50. Wow, that's a lot of episodes in a row. Tomorrow. So if you have questions, let us know. If any of this is landing and leaving you with questions, please reach out. We're happy to help. And then just a forewarning, we may take the whole weekend off, or maybe just Sunday, but we decided on a balance thing that we actually need to not be in work mode on Sunday. So we appreciate you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Later, y'all.